is the Amy Edwards Show, and we're here to uplevel our lives in every way at every age. Let's do this.
Exercise in and of itself is actually not a good weight loss tool. And so if we're using exercise to burn calories, which a lot of people do, and I think just generally speaking, a lot of women use exercise from that caloric expenditure standpoint of like, hey, if I didn't eat great yesterday, if I go to this class, I burned 500 calories, that will offset, a lot of my consumption, and that's where we'll create the calorie equation from. Unfortunately, that's actually not really how our metabolism works. And on paper, it kind of makes sense, but there's a lot of metabolic pushback, what we call metabolic compensation, and ultimately what's called metabolic adaptation. And what we experience with these phenomenon, Amy, is that the more we exercise, the more aggressively we exercise, actually the slower things tend to get. In other words, if I go and I'm, my rationale is like, hey, I need to start to lose weight. I'm just going to go start running for 30 minutes every day. And maybe running helps me burn 500 calories for 20 or 30 minutes. Well, sure, I might burn those calories, but what we're going to see on the back end, I'm going to get home from running, and maybe an hour later, I'm going to be ravenously hungry. And then I'm going to end up overeating by at least 500 calories. And then I might also, because I'm tired from doing the running, which I'm not used to, I might end up just sitting on the couch for the very rest of the day, as opposed to my normal behaviors, which is like being up and about, doing chores, taking the dog for a walk, running around with my kids. Exercise is not a good weight loss tool. The vast majority of our caloric control needs to come from our nutrition.
Hello, and welcome to the show. It's a new year. It's a new us. I mean, it's not really a new us, but I like to jump into a new year and do all the things and feel really good and reconnect with my health and mental state. And today we're going to talk to a health expert, a health and wellness expert, and fitness and metabolism expert, Ben Brown. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Ben Brown. Ben is a nutrition and fitness coach, a metabolic health expert, and the host of the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. He's the founder of Body Systems, where he works with high-performing men and women, especially over 40, that's us, and helps them build a sustainable strength, energy, and confidence model using a science-based, real-world approach. Ben specializes in nutrition, metabolism, strength training, and executive wellness, and known for challenging conventional fitness wisdom, especially the idea that more exercise automatically leads to weight loss. His work helps people step out of an all-or-nothing thinking into what he calls a personal operating system for health, one that actually fits real life. We're all about it and about keeping it simple. I love that you have the word simple in your podcast title, Ben. So I'm so excited to have you here and talk about this, especially at the beginning of the year. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Amy, for having me. I like I said, no place I'd rather be. I'm incredibly grateful to be here to share with your audience, and just looking forward to a good conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I think that your journey really reflects a lot of getting things back to basics. And I feel like we all know by now what we should be doing, but what really makes a difference to get to that shift of treating it as a lifestyle and treating it as a personal operating system? Like when we're not doing it, what's going to help us get there when we need it? Or what have you found with your work?
Yeah, well, I think what we have the tendency to do as humans is we have the tendency to make things more complex than they need to be. I think that's part of how our brain operates, and it's the part of how we learn lessons, right? And how we learn, and it's by challenging ourselves. And I've done that plenty over the past 20 years of being in this industry. Through my own personal struggles, and then having just this incredible opportunity to work with hundreds, if not thousands, of incredible people along the way to really realize, okay, what is actually working, what doesn't work, and how do we need to think about this? And that has lent itself to us really figuring out what works best for us as an individual. And so when it comes to kind of not making things too complex, there's some fundamental principles at place that we can't argue with, right? We know from a dietary standpoint, we need to manage our calorie intake. We need to eat enough protein intake, enough protein, right? We need to move our body frequently enough. We want to strength train and maintain, if not improve, some lean muscle tissue and bone density, especially as we're getting older, right? We need to, manage our stressors and sleep enough and all of the things that are obligatory that we tend to overlook when we're looking for that magic bullet. And like I said, make it more challenging than it needs to be when for most of us who are here and probably most of your listeners, when I just rattle off, walk enough, sleep enough, manage stress, drink enough water, eat enough protein, and manage your calories, like there in and of itself, that's probably 95% of the battle.
It absolutely truly is, but we get in this scrolling or whatever we're doing, this overwhelm of information, and then you're just like, oh, well, I should be doing this, and I should be doing this, and I better have a red light, and, the list goes on and on. And so I like that you're boiling it down because I guess we're making it more complex because of an inundation of information, but you said it's kind of a setting that we have. Well, I wonder why that is.
Well, I think it's in our nature to want to move the needle in the fastest, most effective way possible.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
the nature of marketing is such that we're led to believe that we can do things necessarily, certainly do things with minimal amounts of work or effort, if you will. And I don't think people are inherently lazy, but I think, again, like we want the reward without the work. I mean, who
Yeah.
doesn't, right? But the problem therein is we are just indoctrinated with confusing and conflicting information around, okay, well, I know I need to eat better, but what do I eat, right? Do I eat
Mhm.
more protein and fat? Do I eat more carbohydrate? Do I eat more plant-based? Do I eat more keto? Do I need to do more strength training or do I need to do more cardio or more boot camp classes or like, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's just like so much stuff. And so while intentions are good, I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed and then kind of get lost down the rabbit hole of whatever feels like it might be the easiest or have the lowest barrier to entry for us and our personality and our rationale, kind of the story that we tell ourselves. And I don't think that's a bad thing, Amy. I think I can guarantee that the vast majority of your listeners have been down that road before and they've tried a myriad of things. Some have worked for some period of time. Other things haven't worked at all. But regardless of whether it quote unquote worked or not, we've learned lessons from all of those things, right? And
Uh-huh.
we've learned lessons to the degree to tell us, well, this is how it made me feel. This is how it worked within the context of my lifestyle, my preferences, what I want my life to look like, the nuances of my family life and those dynamics, my social support system. And I think that's a good thing. And I think we can take all those little pieces of information, Amy, and we can leverage those to start to build, like I said, this operating system of like what works for us in terms of our nutrition, our training, our movement, our lifestyle, our sleeping recovery behaviors. How does that work for us and the way I want my life to look like? And where are the trade-offs involved? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And I can say unequivocally for the vast majority of people, when it comes to sort of the restrictive dieting mindset or the aggressive exercise mindset, we pretty much come to the conclusion like, yeah, it might have quote unquote worked for a period of time, but it didn't work within the context of like, I'm just not willing to make those sacrifices for the return on that investment. And I think that's a good thing. And that helps us start to put those pieces in place.
Wow, that was really well said. I talk a lot about on that show. I talk a lot about that on this show about taking what works for you and leaving the rest and figuring that out and that how it evolves over time. And the way you just phrase that just makes so much sense. Like finding your personal operating system. I really love that. And it is a matter of evolving as well. How have you seen that present in your own life as far as things that you've done before that then maybe aren't worth it as you've progressed and grown or aged
Yeah,
or
for sure. Well,
Mhm.
as I mean, if you've spoken to enough quote unquote health practitioners or clinicians, a lot of us is sort of a pain to purpose story. And so for me, it was, growing up, I had a lot of stomach issues that conventional medicine couldn't figure out. And I was kind of on all of the antacid medications when I was in high school and would throw up all the time and IBS type
Wow.
symptoms. and didn't really acknowledge at the time that that was pretty abnormal. It's just kind of what was.
Yeah.
And some stuff that my mother dealt with. And again, for my family, it kind of was just like, par for the course, but came to realize as I was playing sports, I played sports in college and then started going to graduate school and throughout my studies, started to really realize like, hey, this is anything but normal. I should probably feel a lot better than I am feeling. And, realized pretty early on that it had a lot to do with my nutrition. And it had a lot to do with my gut health. It had a lot to do with sort of this holistic aspect of how our body actually functions. As I continued to dive deeper down the rabbit hole, started to study more functional medicine, got my first master's degree, and really started to study with practitioners around the world, ultimately just to kind of figure out my own stuff. And by virtue of doing that, kind of diagnosed what was going on with my gut. I had a nasty bacterial infection called H. pylori, coupled with the fact that I had been on just a myriad of rounds of antibiotics throughout my youth, which had just destroyed my gut and everything that comes with that. And so I had to kind of rebuild. And through that rebuilding process, I got very myopically focused on my nutrition, had cut out all gluten. I mean, this was 20 years ago, no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, lots of supplementation as I kind of was working to refortify things. And while it worked really well for me at the time to get my health back, it also created almost this like orthorexic relationship around food and being quote unquote good and bad, and sort of this dichotomous, like I was really good during the week and then I would just go off the rails on the weekend, and everything that revolves around working with clients of kind of this imposter syndrome of I was presenting as this kind of perfectionist type of coach, but behind the scenes was just not making good decisions. Um, and expecting the same from my clients of like, no, you can't eat any of these things, only to realize, well, either I'd lose them as a client, right? They'd fall off the wagon and it would be their fault and not mine. And of course, over the years of doing this, of getting married, starting a family, like realizing the strain that was putting in, my relationships, on my personal life, on myself, started to ease the reins and ultimately study more and more and realize like, this is so far from what is actually healthy. Right, to the degree that, as I've hopefully been communicating, is there's just so many different ways to express health, to drive fat loss, to improve body composition. And it doesn't revolve around this overly restrictive mindset.
Uh, I appreciate your candor and your honesty there because I think people look at someone like you and they think, oh, they've got it all together and they never make a mistake and all that. But it really is about living your life and then understanding that it's not about perfection in anything,
Right.
right? And okay, there was a lot packed in there. Oh, I wanted to touch on H. pylori too. I did some gut work recently, and a lot of people walk around with that, I think,
Yes.
that she told me and don't know it. And it's an interesting test for people to get. And isn't it really, really contagious too? Like if
It's
one
very
person gets
contagious and it's
a
very
family,
common.
like a
Yeah.
family can
Hmm.
have it. So I just wanted to touch on that really quick and say if somebody didn't know what that was, that's something that you can get tested for. Yeah.
Yeah, you can test it for it. It's way more common than people think, and it really has. What one of the things that we see is it contributes because it's this bacteria that lives in the stomach lining, and it contributes to acid indigestion type symptoms. The crux of it is that it actually suppresses stomach acid, and so while we might be quote unquote diagnosed with excessive like GERD or excessive stomach acid and you go on a acid blocking medication, it's actually hypochlorhydria or it's low stomach acid. And so we're further reinforcing the problem of low stomach acid, which lends itself to poor digestion of protein, poor breakdown of nutrients. And it just reinforces this whole process where most people actually need more stomach acid. So I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it is something to take into consideration if you're experiencing a lot of those acid indigestion type symptoms, and you can't get relief. I'd tread very lightly around the acid indigestion type medications.
Yeah. Oh no, that's important. I'm glad that we just like touched on that a little bit so people can kind of pay attention to it. And I hadn't even heard of it till last year. And I was like, oh, but I didn't have it. So anyway, worth getting checked on. So thank you. Okay, back into your story. I think that it is so interesting because you really were forced to suddenly take stock because of what you do for a living. You were like, I'm not walking the walk of really, truly this lifestyle. And how can you expect other people to do that? Or how can you teach other people to do that? So it sort of takes you back into the very most basic part, which is being honest with yourself about how you're living and how you want to live. And do you do that with your clients? Is that one of the first things that you tell people to do? I just think that's really interesting because you really are forced to go like, what am I really doing? Am I really talking bad to myself and,
Yes.
not healthy in this most fundamental way of being honest with myself,
I
right?
mean, at the end of the day, it really comes down to like, what do we truly want? Big picture, like you tell me that you want to lose 10 or 20 or 30 plus pounds. You want to look better, at the beach, you
Yeah.
want to feel better and more comfortable in your skin. What does all of that lend itself to? What are you able to do, not do? How do your relationships change? How does your life change because of those perhaps surface level, improvements? And that's what we're trying to get at first and foremost. And then what are you willing to do to get there? Right? Because if we acknowledge that all of this is trade-offs and who you are now is not the same person that's going to walk around 20 pounds lighter, looking better, feeling better, being more magnetic, more confident, higher self-belief, right? Attracting the things that you want in life. Well, then we have to figure out what needs to go, what needs to come and what needs to go. And that's a really hard question because oftentimes we want the benefit without having to, like we said, like without having to do the work, but it means you're going to have to dig into your relationships, your communication, the people that you're surrounding yourself with, the circumstances that you put yourself in, the decisions that you're consistently making and why you're making them, you know,
Yeah.
all of those things. And that
Yeah.
becomes so much more important, not to get too woo or, esoteric, but legitimately, that's why it's so much more than just tell me what calories to eat or just help me build a meal plan or just tell me what exercise to do. I can do that all day long. And I've done that. Right. And I've done that and it doesn't stick because you haven't acknowledged that you need to become a different person.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah. I lost some weight in the last couple years that I had gained, and I knew I needed to and I wanted to and I wanted to fit in my clothes. And there were like those surface level things that you were talking about. But I'm trying now to take note of like how much better I feel in my body and how much more comfortable I am functioning in the world and just not and try to have that more healthy and aligned attitude of like, this is who I want to be. And I don't know, it's been interesting to find that balance because I have some unhealthy habits and mindsets and all those things that I've been brainwashed by society or, my lineage and ancestry and women and, what name it, right? And so we've got to break those. And I just think there's a lot of mindsets that are interesting to pay attention to when we really get down to it,
I
you
mean,
know?
we all do. And
Yeah, we all do. We all
I'm
do.
glad you're sharing that. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to share this because it's just so misunderstood or not acknowledged with the social media landscape that we're in because it's everyone's highlight reel and you scroll and you see someone's body and you're like, oh, I got to be like them. They must have it together. What do they eat? What do they do? You know, and then you're not seeing behind the scenes is that, there's areas of their life where they're an absolute disaster too. And I wish people had the ability to acknowledge that more of just the understanding, like, look, just because I have it together with my nutrition and fitness doesn't mean I'm not a mess in other areas of my life or struggling in other areas. Um, And I think it would give people permission to not try and be so perfect. And if we didn't have to constantly worry about trying to be perfect, which ends up causing us to stagnate because we think we have so much stuff to do, which is overwhelming. So we don't do any of it. Instead would just be, and I posted a, quick video today in there because I was totally in the turmoil of like, what do I post on social media? I'm like, you know how it is. It's like you just keep going down the rabbit hole of like all the things you should do and you don't do anything. And I was like, I'm just taking
Yeah.
that. I'm just going to post one video. I'm just going to
Way to
post this
go.
and
Yes.
share. And it's like, just start to build momentum. But if we only did that with our nutrition and fitness too, you can go for a walk. You can, you can make a healthy meal. You can drink a glass of water. You can go to bed earlier, right? You can do a meditation session. You can set an intention. You can journal. It's like the list goes on, but we're looking for the perfect plan. And if we would absolve ourselves of that perfectionist mentality, then we'd be in such a better position to actually just start to move the needle.
I mean, and like you said, that goes for everything, even social media. I mean, something's better than nothing. And when you're wanting to do something, just do something, do something like make a healthier choice right now. Like, eat the salad instead of the fries or whatever. That's just my
Yeah,
own
and it's not
personal
a wait till
example.
Monday. It's not I'll start after the new
Right.
year. It's like, dude, you need to provide evidence that you are the person that you say you want to be. And that starts right now with your very next decision so that you can start to reinforce those things and stop breaking promises to yourself and legitimately start to make those changes. And I think if more people could acknowledge that, and that's kind of what we work through when we're working together, it's a lot having to do with the narratives that we're setting, the expectations that we're setting, the stories that we're telling ourselves, the language that we're using, to say nothing of just matter of fact physics of like, yeah, by the way, we also need to control for calories. I also need you to get off your ass and start to move more and commit to training more consistently. And what does that look like in the gym? And how do we challenge ourselves in ways where you are going to be consistent with it? And that's where the individualization comes in. And again, your personal operating system is like, listen, if you've never trained before, I don't expect you to go in the gym and do 4 days a week of heavy strength training, but maybe we can get a set of dumbbells and start to do stuff at home. And that's what the process looks like.
Totally. I mean, one of my mottos that I live by is I just try to do it more often than I don't. So I'm like that, like, as if I can live by that, like if I look back on my week and I'm like, I ate like shit more than I didn't, more than I ate healthy. And then I'm like, okay, that's the area that you need to clean up, right? And I just try to lean in to the good things more than the
Well,
not so good things
I
to
mean,
kind of
what I would challenge you with there is how do we be a little bit more objective about that, right? Like, what does that actually mean? How many meals, so what we might consider would be like, how many meals out do I have versus how many home cooked meals?
yeah,
How many
yeah,
meals am I focused on getting, 30 grams of protein with each of those meals versus
yeah.
just having more snacky foods? How many meals am I, or how many times a day do I end up snacking, between meals when the intention is just to eat 3 square meals without snacking in between? And so there's, even just a good example, Amy, not to call you out, but
No, no, that's good.
again, I think getting really, really granular about what our intentions are and how we can actually start to quantify them to the degree that when you start to think about things and measure things that way, it becomes really easy to actually know whether or not you're making progress.
I love that. All right. Well, you've mentioned, let's get into some like brass tacks on things. You've mentioned calories a few times, and I know, you know, calories got kind of bad rap for a while. No one was talking about calories. Everyone was into macros, but I feel like calories are making a comeback and counting calories. And so let's talk about your view on calories and how we should approach those.
I mean, calories matter. So I guess, it's like calories matter. If we're talking about weight loss or we're talking about weight gain or we're talking about muscle gain, like my answer for everything is always going to be it depends. But at the end of the day, it's fair to say if you are overweight, if you have body fat to lose, the likelihood that you are in some way, shape, or form over consuming on calories is almost 100%, right?
Right.
Um, so understanding that, then the question becomes, well, how do I, manage my calorie intake in a way where we can consume less than we expend, right? And that's really the name of the game when it comes to weight loss. Of course, there's nuances. GLP-1 drugs are a good example of like ways that are going to make you manage your calorie intake, whether you realize it or not. They curb hunger. They eliminate food noise. They're going to put you in a position where you're going to eat less. You're going to be less likely to eat as frequently. You're going to be less likely to snack. You're probably going to be less likely to drink alcohol and everything that comes with drinking alcohol. And so therefore, we're consuming way less calories, and weight is certainly going to follow that. So we can't argue with the role that calories play from a physics standpoint and the laws of thermodynamics. And so that really is when the weight loss game, Amy, like that's the name of the game, is like we need to find ways to control for calories. But then within that is, of course, we have macronutrients. These are the foods that make up calories, your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats, and the different foods that make up those macronutrients. And this is where nutrient density is really, really important for health, for performance, for body composition change, right? Because we can eat, we can drop calories and just be eating Twinkies for all intents and purposes and lose weight, but we're probably not going to be really happy with how we look at that lower weight versus if we're eating more protein, if we're eating more vegetables and fruits and getting more nutrition. And so hopefully that explains the nuances there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and I do know all that. I think I've just followed things in the past that were like, just ignore calories and really focus on your macros. But I eat vegan, so I eat a lot of veggies, mostly vegan. I'm not hardcore, but so I eat a lot of vegetables and things like that. So it is kind of easier for me to just pay attention to, okay, where am I getting my protein and what's that look like for me, things like that. So it's just interesting. I think that, I don't know. I just feel
If
like
you,
calories have been kind of
if
weird.
someone tracks their macros, they're tracking their calories, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're like, I need to hit 100 grams of protein and,
Yeah.
100 grams of carbs and 50 grams of fat, well, right then and there, we know that's a certain number of calories because there's 4 calories per gram of protein, 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate, and 9 calories per gram of fat. So therein, like, okay, then we're consuming whatever, 1,800, 1,600 calories, whatever that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So also I wanted to dial in like, if you're exercising a lot and not losing weight, then that definitely means that there's something happening like under the hood that people are missing. And it's usually a calorie overload.
So um, that's a really good area to discuss because here's what we know very clearly about exercise and weight loss, and it's that
Okay.
exercise in and of itself is actually not a good weight loss tool. And so, if we're using exercise to burn calories, which a lot of people do, and I think just generally speaking, a lot of women use exercise from that caloric expenditure standpoint of like, hey, if I didn't eat great yesterday, if I go to this, class, I burned 500 calories, that will offset, a lot of my consumption. And, that's where we'll create the calorie equation from. Unfortunately, that's actually not really how our metabolism works. And on paper, it kind of makes sense, but there's a lot of metabolic pushback, what we call metabolic compensation, and ultimately what's called metabolic adaptation. And what we experience with these phenomenon, Amy, is that really the more we exercise, the more aggressively we exercise, actually the slower things tend to get. In other words, if I go and my rationale is like, hey, I need to start to lose weight. I'm just going to go start running for 30 minutes every day. And maybe running helps me burn 500 calories for 20 or 30 minutes. Well, sure, I might burn those calories, but what we're going to see on the back end, I'm going to get home from running and maybe an hour later, I'm going to be ravenously hungry, right? And then I'm going to end up overeating by at least 500 calories. And then I might also, because I'm tired from doing the running, which I'm not used to, I might end up just sitting on the couch for the very rest of the day, as opposed to my normal behaviors, which is like being up and about, doing chores, taking the dog for a walk, running around with my kids. And so there's a lot of, like I said, compensatory mechanisms at play that contribute to why exercise is not a good weight loss tool. It's super healthy. It's great for our hormones. It's great for muscle tissue. It's great for brain and immune system support, depending on how much and the type that we're doing. And I'm happy to dive into that. But one of the things we need to shift in terms of the conventional wisdom, exercise is not a good weight loss tool. The vast majority of our caloric control needs to come from our nutrition. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh my gosh, yes, I've done exactly what you just described before. I mean,
We
like,
all have.
in the past, I mean, like, you nailed it. And then, yes, it does, and I know when I look back, it's so much about my nutrition. It's about, like, feeling satiated and paying attention to that, and when I eat out too much, that's like the kiss of death for me. I don't have the control when I'm out to really, and you don't even know what's going in it, right? They could just be putting butter all over everything, and which they probably are.
That's
And
actually is what's happening.
yeah,
There's way
yeah,
more there's way
yeah,
more dietary fat when we're eating out than people realize. And so
yeah.
that's where from a calorie standpoint, you can be making, healthy, quote unquote, healthy decisions, but you're actually getting way more fat than you realize. And we see that quite a lot.
Yeah, I see. I mean, and I know that. I can tell by my body. I can tell it by how I feel. I have to cook at home. I have to eat at home. I have to just roast some vegetables. Like, it's not that hard. You mentioned in there, yeah, and that made total sense, and I loved it. You mentioned in there your immune system, and I know that you talk about immune suppression from common fitness habits, and I wondered how what you said might be related to that, or if overtraining, can sabotage your metabolism without realizing it.
Yeah, I mean, what I just discussed is part of how the metabolism responds to exercise.
Yeah.
And so one of the things about exercise and the intensity of exercise is some is good, but more isn't better. And what we actually see with extended periods of relatively intense exercise, so beyond basically 60 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, while over those 60 minutes, there tends to be this sort of transient bump in immune system function, meaning we could go out and get a good moderate hike, get our heart rate up a little bit. That kind of boosts our immune system, which is why it's so good to move frequently throughout the day, especially after traveling. I mean, just all of the time. But when we overdo it, right? And this is a lot of people's perfectionist mentality. Some is good, more is better.
Mhm.
And we're like, well, why go on a 1 hour hike when I can do a 3 hour hike and I'll burn that much more calories? But what
Sure.
ends up happening
Mm.
is we end up applying more stress than our body can handle. It actually ends up suppressing our immune system. And so that, right, lends itself to getting sick more frequently, not recovering from exercise, um, you name it. But this is where the whole I'm just going to eat less and exercise more dogma just really doesn't pan out, because we end up just kneecapping ourselves and finding ourselves in a situation where we get injured, we get sick, and we end up rebounding hard because metabolically we just can't maintain that level of stress.
This is so, you know, just balanced. Your view, it's like, like, it just is comforting. I think a lot of people can listen to this and be like, "Okay, so I just need to just chill out a little bit and just, like, go for a walk." I mean, I feel like that's been the revelation to me as I've gotten older. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can just walk." I remember during the pandemic, I just started walking all the time, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I was in amazing shape, and I would do, like, a short circuit or something like that along with it, and I was eating at home, of course, like, all the time, and I just got in really, really great shape, and, somebody was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Walking," and it was just so counter to what I'd been taught for so many years, and if we can just I think just we get swept away with overtraining and all these things, and it's so nice to hear the professionals say, "Just just don't overtrain," like,
See,
do the
eh,
hour hike and eat
I
something
mean,
healthy,
I wouldn't classify it as overtraining as much as I would classify it as just periods of trying to be too aggressive. and
Okay.
or too restrictive. And
Yeah.
so what actually happens here, right? What actually happens is we go hard for a week or two or three, and here we are, post New Year's. So a lot of people are probably in this current milieu of white knuckling it and pushing it hard in the exercise. And then what happens? We end up having a bad, meal, a bad day, a bad week.
You go on a
Um,
trip or something
yeah,
like
you go on,
that.
you got a trip coming up and you say,
Yeah.
screw it. And then quote unquote, fall off the wagon for a few days, a few weeks, a few months. And that's kind of the yo-yo cycle that a lot of people find themselves in until they can muster up the motivation to want to do something overly restrictive again, right? That's kind of the definition of insanity. When consider, well, what if we actually did was set actual some realistic expectations around what an understanding what we call this dose response, right? Some is good, more is not always better. And oftentimes there's this drop off. So, what if I told you, listen, would it be more reasonable to strength train 2 to 3 days a week and walk every day versus feeling like you need to train 4 to 5 days a week? And what if we ate in a calorie deficit, but not so aggressive that you were starving all of the time and couldn't eat any of the foods that you naturally would want to eat or enjoy? Right? Do you think you'd be more likely to stay consistent with the diet, if you will, than trying to overly restrict yourself? And so imagine if you had that more modest approach over an extended period of time. It's like the classic, like rabbit and the hare type scenario,
Yeah.
right? And so when we can create a situation where someone has the autonomy and the freedom to not kill themselves, to enjoy the things that they want within reason, to take full ownership, and they're empowered to make those decisions and not be bound by an overly restrictive meal plan or the psychological restrictions of I can't have that, then they're more likely to do it consistently. They're
Yeah.
more likely to find enjoyment in it. And intrinsically, then they're more likely to be more motivated to want to keep doing those things, which is the name of the game when it comes to, like we said, is like, who do I need to become? Changing that identity and becoming someone who naturally just eats healthy, makes better decisions, wants to exercise, um, and right, all of that.
All of that. I mean, 1,000,000%. But, it's been for me, and I probably a lot of people can identify with this or relate to this. With me, it's just been such a practice to break those old mindsets of like, I have to do it every day or I'm a failure. And I just did it today, Ben, and I was gonna get to the gym today, and then I just got caught up with other things, work, whatever. And I didn't go, and I was like, "You know what? You've already been how many days this week?" And I rode my Peloton one day, and I'm actually that was a really hard interval class, and I don't ride bikes a lot, so I noticed that I was more sore and more worn out after that, and so, like, was like, "It's okay to go for a walk later," just you know, I guess my point is that I it's a practice for me to get to that mindset that that's the way I can live my life and feel really good. And I hold myself to this weird standard from I don't even know where I got it or why I have it, that I have to do it every day. And so, uh, yes, I guess my point is yes, but it's a practice to get to that mindset. And did you have to get to a practice to get to that mindset? Like, did you
Yeah,
have to adopt it as a practice? Like, how'd that look for
I
you in
still
real
do. I
life?
mean,
You
listen,
still
we
do?
still give
Okay, good.
ourselves hell over the things that we
Yeah.
think we should be doing that we don't do. So
I guess
listen,
that's
I
kind of my
mean,
point is like, it's normal to be like, okay, yeah, I'm all right. Like, I can do it 3 times a week and I'm good, like
I just
resetting to that.
Yeah, I think I put, wrap all of this into setting realistic expectations. And
Yeah,
I think one of the most powerful skills that we can develop is finding that right balance between challenging ourselves so that we can get better and putting ourselves in a position where we're guaranteed to fail because the expectations that we set are just unrealistic for anyone, right?
totally.
And when you factor in what most people's lives, especially like when we're in this kind of midlife, I've got 3 kids, you know,
Wow.
um, I run a business, married and responsibilities. And it's like, okay, if I told myself I have to, walk for an hour every day and train 5 days a week and, only eat quote unquote clean, and I could never
Yeah.
snack or eat junk, and I had to go to bed by this time. It's like there has to be some margins here and some flexibility, yet I'm still going to challenge myself to, want to consistently get better in all of these areas. So that's really what it comes down to when I'm working with clients, is getting clear on where those expectations lie. Um, and are we in a position where we can realistically commit to doing the things that we need to do to get the outcome that you said that you want for the season of life that you're in?
Yeah.
And then we just break it down systematically. Like I was challenging you with some objective metrics,
I love that.
because then we can work backwards and we can say, okay, well, what does that mean? It
Hmm.
means I'm going to accumulate 8,000 steps a day throughout the day. I'm going to eat 3 meals without snacking. I'm going to hit enough protein. I'm going to strength train 3 days a week. And here's when I'm going to do these things. And here's where I have a bit of margin to adjust. And that's all I'm focusing on. And if I do nothing else, we can still consider this to be a very successful day, week, month. And that's where we really see the needle move.
And if somebody's really looking to reframe their exercise goals, what might that look like if it's not just about your pants fitting, but maybe it's about function, energy, um, resilience, or this something like that?
I mean, longevity, health, longevity, quality of life, especially in midlife and beyond, is correlated directly to strength and muscle mass to a degree, as
Yeah.
particularly strength. And so
Yeah.
when I say that, I mean the stronger that we are, the more likely we're going to live a long, healthy, quality life. And all of us have parents or grandparents or people that we know who are in the later stages of life who are bound to a bed, a chair, a home, not living out their best years. I don't want that. You don't want that. I'm confident no one listening wants that. And so it begs the question of, what do we need to do now to set the stage and start to build that compounding interest if we haven't already, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is right now. And it's our responsibility, if we want to have that long, healthy life, to start to focus on the types of nutrition and exercise parameters that are going to be able to do that. And the most important thing, like I said, with strength, is strength training. We have to create some form of resistance training and a stimulus that the body is going to adapt to. So I am a huge proponent of conventional strength training, of actually lifting weights, of actually loading our spine to drive an increase in bone mineral density. There's a myriad of ways we can do this, but um, but it does revolve some form of resistance training. And for most people, that's going to mean lifting some form of weights, whether it's at home, whether it's in the gym, whether it's a personal trainer, whether it's in some dedicated class. You just got to do it.
You gotta do it. The times that I've avoided it, I'm like, I can recognize that I'm avoiding it. I went through this little Pilates, spurt a while back, but I was avoiding doing the real work of lifting weights, which I know works, which I know has so many benefits. So I am 1,000,000% behind you on that one. Um, and and it I mean, it doesn't have to be like you said, it's not something you have to do every single day, but if you're consistent with it, that's where we're gonna get the payoff.
Well, listen, that this is where the dose response comes in, and not going in and feeling like you have to absolutely trash yourself, because the cool part about human physiology is the adaptation mechanism, to the degree that if you've never really consistently lifted weights before, you don't need a whole heck of a lot to start to adapt. And this is then
Interesting.
what's called progressive overload. And science around strength training is really, okay, now we just keep progressing and challenging the body in different ways by progressively adding more weight, increasing our time under tension, changing the exercise variety, um, the number of reps, the number of sets. There's just so many different ways where we can do that. And that's what's beautiful about it, to the degree that we can very clearly track progress and do it in a way where hopefully you're finding some enjoyment through the process. But you can't, I've never had anyone who started strength training and hasn't reaped the benefits in terms of looking better, feeling more confident, feeling more capable, and ultimately wanting to continue doing it in some way, shape, or form.
Totally. I mean, when people were asking me what I was doing when I was getting ready for my wedding, and they were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "It's so boring, y'all. It's walking and lifting weights and lifting heavy weights. That's it, you know?" And nothing's I mean, I'm in my 50s and nothing is better. Like, I mean, when I look back on my whole life, and it's those times that I feel my best. And so what does you called it dose response?
Yeah.
What does dose
It's
response
basically so imagine a curve, right? We apply a dose of something and then the body responds to it. So this is strength training, right? So there's a certain amount of exercise that we need to do for the body to respond. But applying more exercise and more exercise and more exercise isn't going to elicit the same response. At some
Right.
point, there's a tipping point where, again, more isn't better, and we're going to fall off a cliff of then we just get sore, then we just create injury, right? Something like that. It's the same idea, I suppose, maybe for lack of a better analogy, of where people might like start to take poison or microdoses of poison or something, and so that their body can respond to it. But the point is that you don't just go in and annihilate yourself. You don't need a whole heck of a lot for the body to respond. That's the dose response mechanism at play. And so the longer we strength train, obviously the higher the dose we need to apply, but it doesn't go up linearly. It goes up
Yeah.
to the degree that at some point there's sort of this very modest linear rise, meaning and over time, we don't need a whole heck of a lot once we have a solid muscle mass foundation in place. And so it's this beautiful relationship around how we can build lean muscle tissue, support lean muscle tissue, assuming our nutrition is on point, and our mass stress management and lifestyle. And like you said strength training and walking. And honestly, it is the cheat code here where people just don't realize how simple it can be. We just make it, going very back to the beginning, we make it so much more complex and more challenging than it needs to be. And it really isn't. It's really very simple at the end of the day, but it does require you to get very, very clear about what you're willing to do and not do. Because that's where most people get stuck, is they get themselves in situations where they say they want one thing, but they're not willing to do the things that they need to do to get it.
Oh, I bet you see that all the time, just so it's so I do too, actually. I've seen it time and again with people, and they say they want something, but you've gotta what are you gonna do to get it to really feel good? And, I mean, it's not easy to quit drinking, and it's not easy to get up and go to the gym, but, you how bad do you want it, right? And, I don't know, the older I get, it's just interesting. It's just interesting to
Well, I
see that.
also think it takes longer than most people realize. So, right, it's simple, it's
That's
not
the
easy.
truth.
And it's
Yeah.
like, listen, I don't know, you've been podcasting for a long time. How many podcast episodes do you have?
For this show, this is my 4th podcast, but this show, 250 you'll be 257, I believe, something like that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I just recorded this morning, I recorded episode 299 of
Hell
my podcast.
yeah.
Now,
Nice.
I've been podcasting for over 8 years.
Yeah.
I think you're probably around the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, I'm at 10 years, but this show is 5, so, mhm.
And it's like, you just kind of got to be willing to play the long game without
Oh, yes.
expecting, anything. It's like, and I think when it comes to, the dieting and the exercise, it's not unreasonable to expect to see change, but it is unreasonable to expect to see change at the rate that you think. And most people have just grossly unrealistic expectations around what they think they should be seeing over the first 2, 3, 7, 12, 20, 30, days of dieting and exercise. You give it 3 months, you give it a year, you give it 2 years, and you keep those behaviors in place. And that's when you really will see the transformation occur. And so, again, when it comes to kind of shifting expectations, that's a lot of it. It's like, dude, we just frame things out. Because I have a lot of clients come to me, they're like, I'm frustrated, things aren't changing. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You're down 20 pounds over the past 5 months. What do you mean things
Wow.
aren't changing? We see body compositions improving X amount. You're stronger, you're more confident. We just had this conversation, but the stories and the narratives that we have in our head are such that we constantly focus on the bad things or what's not happening and and not highlight or shine light on the good things, right?
Totally, totally. So, yeah, and we just lose sight of those things, but that's such a good point too about playing the long game. I mean, it's true across the board in anything we do, and we have to find ways to find enjoyment for what we're eating, what we're spending our time and energy doing, really, truly. And that's a huge mental leap for many people, right? We want the magic pill and you want it to be fast. And instead, we have to find ways to enjoy it. I know for me, I have to create a banging playlist. Like, I have to, I have to have some good music to look forward to. I have to make it fly by in some way where it's fun and I'm enjoying myself. And I do. It takes me about 9 minutes to get into it. And then my endorphins are kicking in and I'm off and running
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to speak. So, yes, let's talk a little bit more. We've been talking about food, calories, all that. Let's talk a little bit about the food guide
Oh,
pyramid
yeah.
that has come out recently, and I wanted to get maybe your take on it. And I haven't studied it enough because we just threw that out when we were first hopping on this call. And so, tell me your thoughts and some practical guidelines that you follow.
So in all fairness, I have not studied it because candidly, I just don't care. I don't think people care.
I
Um,
know, right?
I mean, listen, I don't. People don't know what the previous food guide pyramid looked like. Everyone kind of knows of the old food pyramid with all the carbs at the
I
bottom,
know,
and
yeah, I know what mine looked like in, like, 4th grade when I
yeah,
learned
it's
it in
like
elementary school, and it was like, I don't know, there was bread and there was cheese and milk or something like that.
I mean, let's be honest. The people that care are typically the people that have some biases towards
Yeah,
why this matters. And so if we see at the top of the pyramid now, this inverted pyramid, and there's red meat and there's cheese at the top. So we have all the carnivore zealots are going to be super happy with that
are
because
you
it's
fucking kidding? Wait, I'm pulling it up right now. It's
yeah, no, 100%.
oh my it says it goes all in on meat and dairy. Are you this is from
Now they
NPR
still
that I'm looking at.
specify it's listen,
Oh, dear
again,
dear
so,
God.
okay, so a good example, like you're more plant-based.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now we're gonna have a lot of plant-based people, good, bad, and the ugly, coming back saying, well, this refutes all of the evidence around intake of animal protein and saturated fat.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, like it does I believe it classifies that saturated fat needs to stay under 10%, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But the point in all of this, I think, is exactly, what we're discussing of you're going to have some people that are really happy about it because it reinforces their belief system. You're going to have other people, and maybe plant-based is a good example, that are not going to be happy about it because it's all in on animal products. And then we're going to have the political affiliations, which should in no way, shape, or form be attached to our nutritional paradigm, but unfortunately it is. And so we're going to have, anti-MAGA people who are saying, well, just because of the politics of it, I'm going to go in the opposite direction or whatever. Here's what I think is good. I think the emphasis in whole foods. I think moving away from from processed, refined, what I call frankenfoods,
Yeah.
um, low nutrient density foods, overly processed foods is a good thing. So the more lean proteins, fruits, vegetables, whole grains that we can consume, the better it is for everyone. I do appreciate the emphasis on protein and actually the protein specifications are actually on par with what we actually need, not just the RDA for protein. So I think that's a really good thing. But again, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone really cares. I don't think it really matters that much. I
Yeah.
think it is our responsibility to take ownership over our nutrition decisions, as I've already hopefully explicitly, explained. And that means doing our diligence around, eating quality food, planning, preparing appropriately, committing to actually making change. And so overall, I would say it's a good thing, but it's just, I don't think it's going to change. Certainly not going to change anything from a governmental standpoint or from um, a massive food conglomerate standpoint of producing more Fruit Loops.
Yeah, yeah. I know, right, when corporate interests are factored in. Um, so, okay, you mentioned snacking, you mentioned meals. What are some of your non-negotiables with eating and you personally and what you recommend to people? And are you anti-snacking? Because I love to snack.
I'm
So
I'm
that's a hard.
anti-snacking. So here's what we see actually.
Mhm.
So I'm a big fan of is teaching people how to eat meals. So eat enough food at meals at dedicated times that work for them, so that they're actually satiated for 3 or 4 or 5 hours before their next meal, from a hunger management, a hormonal control, specifically hunger hormones like leptin and ghrelin. Um, that seems to work the best. So we can actually have these normal blood sugar rhythms, normal feelings of satiety and hunger, which is really actually important towards weight management, towards portion control, towards like knowing how to eat the way that we should be able to eat. And the problem with quote unquote snacking is twofold. One, it disrupts those natural rhythms,
Mm,
as typically as humans over evolution, we generally wouldn't be in a position where we would be eating all day long. Usually it would be much more periods of feast and famine, of having a bigger meal than going for a long period of time without. And so it seems that for most people, what we typically talk about is like 3 to 4 square meals per day, or maybe 3 meals and a quote unquote snack without snacking in between seems to work the best, because the more people snack, and if you think about the things that the average person, Amy, snacks on, what do they snack on? They snack on like
chips.
chips and what?
Chips. I love
Yeah,
chips. I
chips,
love chips. I mean, it's the
pretzels,
worst. Yeah. Yeah.
nuts, like
Mhm.
actually
Nuts.
really calorically dense, hyper palatable, hyper processed, low nutrient value. So, what we see in the research is the more that people snack, the more calories they consume. And as we already know from earlier in the conversation, the fatter
Yeah.
that they get because they're over consuming calories. And yet, in their mind, they're like, no, I eat healthy. Um, but I'm a bit of a snacker, right? And okay, well, that's kind of the name of the game. So if we can teach people how to not snack, eat more real food meals, figure out how to eat in a way that keeps them satisfied for periods of time between, you're going to be much more likely to control for calories and ultimately create the body composition that you want.
Mhm. Well said. Thank you.
Is that helpful?
You're so right, like, you're so right about that, and I know when I'm eating really a really good meal, I am not snacking. It's
Well,
just, like,
here's
it's so obvious, you
and
know?
this goes into the food guide pyramid because, fortunately, like the actual protein recommendations are being highlighted. And we know when people are consuming more protein, they're more satiated throughout the day. They have better blood sugar management. From a neurotransmitter or a brain chemical standpoint, we have more feel good chemicals. We're likely to make better decisions. We're going to have more neural drive. We're going to be more productive. We're going to be more focused. Um, Again, we're going to have less cravings. And so all of it lends itself to setting up this hormonal environment for us to not want to overeat or crave or consume more sugar. And I think that's one of the best parts about consuming more dietary protein, um, but also the fact that when you're consuming more dietary protein, you're crowding out more processed foods
Yeah,
in and of itself.
yeah. What's your protein look like today? What's your
Uh, today's a two podcasts and multiple calls. So I'm a high protein, high fat day.
Okay.
So I had a hamburger, some leftover, and so did my kids, by the way. My kids
Uh-huh.
we had hamburger, some avocado. One of my daughters had some avocado toast, and some fruit. That was breakfast. And then I had some leftover steak and half an avocado for lunch. And I had a banana and some blueberries. And that's been the day so far. So keeping it pretty high in fat and protein.
Hmm.
And then I'll go work out after this interview, and then I'll have some carbs later on.
Nice. Okay.
What
Good.
about
I
you?
just like to ask. I haven't eaten enough today, unfortunately, but I did have my favorite breakfast is banana and pistachio nuts. That's like
Hmm,
I love eating that together. So that's my kind of regular thing. And then I'm done. When we're done, I am going to have a tofu scramble today,
there we
which is
go.
one of my very favorite things in the world. You add a little turmeric so it looks like eggs.
Do you do eggs? Egg whites, eggs?
I don't.
No
I
eggs.
don't like eggs for some reason. I never really liked eggs. And so but the tofu scramble kind of imitates that.
So
And
it's
then
tofu and vegetables.
yeah, it's tofu with a bunch of
Great.
roasted veggies, and then I toast pumpkin seeds, so I put that
Mm,
on everything. I love
that sounds
toasted.
good.
Oh, it's so good. Toasted pumpkin seeds, nutritional yeast.
I was
I'm
just
like,
going to say nutritional yeast is
I'm
for
yeah.
plant-based is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, so I put some nutritional yeast on there, and then, like, I have a spicy chili, olive oil that I'll drizzle on top. Oh, it's so good. I'm, like, dying for it right
Yeah,
now. So that's,
sounds
like,
like
what
it.
I'm doing right after this. So I know I just didn't I don't know why I didn't eat enough today. I was working. So,
I'm
I should have upped my protein game and had at least a smoothie today, but
I'm just yeah, I'm generally I mean, if you can't tell, I mean, I'm a big proponent of animal protein and certainly quality sourced animal protein, but from
yeah.
when we're talking about protein intake, we're talking about nutrient density, and density of protein sources. It's just the easiest way for people to get a lot of what they need. And having done this for, so many years now, having worked with professional athletes and organizations and entrepreneurs and executives, I just see the function that comes from having a protein forward diet, and um, so I try and prioritize that quite a lot. If you can't tell, with the clients that we work with.
Yeah, I live with a former professional athlete, my husband, and so it's very steaky around here. So lots of steaks. So no, not opposed to it, and I'll have one every now and then. But I don't know, the meat industry just it's tough. It's tough to find that quality meat, I think
I'm
sometimes.
with you,
So,
hundred
yeah,
percent.
I've learned too much, unfortunately. I've read too many books about it. So,
Yeah.
but I still live in Texas, so, whatever. So what I wanna start just wrapping up and getting some of your non-negotiables too. That's why I asked about your diet, and I think it's always interesting to ask, you know, something that you believed when you started out in this business and that now you've completely changed on or that you understand so much more deeply and like what would you tell yourself back then or what is something that you have changed your mind on that really kind of surprises you and you feel like you've come a long way on.
I mean, like I was alluding to, is just sort of the dogma around nutrition. I was in a position where I was so certain that every single person should avoid gluten and, dairy, and that we had to be super restrictive. Otherwise, we weren't going to be successful. And, I was a kid. I mean, I was in my 20s and I didn't have any responsibilities, and you can get away with anything. And even then, I was having a hard time subscribing to it over the big picture. And so it was no wonder that the moms and dads that I was working with at the time were like, dude, this is not, I've gave it a shot for a couple of weeks, but this is not happening. I just can't be successful with this. And so over the years was really come to the realization that, I mean, some capacity, the stress that we place on ourselves around what we think we should be doing in the kitchen and in the gym becomes um, much more of a limiting factor than the diet itself. And so it's giving people grace around acknowledging, as I've said, there's so many ways where we can be successful. But the only way that's going to actually work is if we find a way that fits within our lifestyle, and also acknowledging that, as our lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's really just been the biggest differentiation, to the degree that a lot of what we work on, we say, if hopefully our listeners have heard, I mean, I'm very data driven. So we talk about this, we talk about the science of data collection, right? Because it's important for us to make informed decisions. I want to know how many calories you're consuming. I want to know how many steps you're getting. I want to try and quantify things, Amy, as best we can. Like I was saying to you, how many meals out are you eating? How many meals at home? How much protein are you getting? How many hours of sleep, right? But we also understand the psychology of behavior change, right? And when I tell you you can't have something, well, human nature is such that your brain's saying, F this guy. I'm going to
Must
do the
have.
I'm going to do the
Yes.
exact opposite. So when I tell people they can't have stuff, it's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
And so how can we create a situation where we can simply take ownership and learn how to take more ownership over the decisions that we make, so that it doesn't ever become this restriction? And then lastly um, we said the science. What did we say? The science of data collection, psychology of behavior change, and the last thing is the art of coaching. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Like, you and I are working together. You explain to me what your lifestyle looks like, what you want it to look like, and now I'll help you walk you up the mountain, and take a path that makes sense for the level of effort and commitment and intensity and pre-existing level of knowledge and capabilities that you have, versus what someone else, the path that someone else is taking. And I think that's incredibly important for someone that's looking to get to the proverbial top of the mountain.
Yeah, I mean, we do it with everything else, like when we're really dedicated to something in our lives or bettering ourselves in some way. What as we're wrapping up today, what is something that you wanna either reiterate or what you wanna leave everybody with when we sign
Yeah,
off?
I mean, I think that it's just giving people permission to be themselves and to be okay figuring it out along the way, as long as they're actually taking action towards figuring it out, and stop rooting in the stagnancy of like wanting things to be perfect before you take action. It's like the person who says, I'll go to the gym and I'll hire the personal trainer once I get in shape. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yet people
Right.
do that. They rationalize this stuff all of the time. And so instead, it's like, no, what do I have control over, and what can I do today to start to move? Like I said, I picked up the phone and I made a video. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow. At least that's my intention right now. And I did it today. And I'm just not going to let 2 days go by not doing the thing that I said I'm going to do, so I can create evidence that I'm someone who creates content every single day. And that's what I implore the listeners to do. Actually, what I put together, Amy, if it's okay me sharing, um, I put together a 30-day reset guide based on
Yeah,
what we call our
absolutely.
we so
Absolutely.
it's a 30-day reset based on our 5M framework. And the 5Ms are your mindset, your meals, your movement, your muscle, and your metabolism. And very simple in terms of what can we do for each of these M's to get the needle moving in a realistic way, without counting calories, without overly restrictive dieting, without killing yourself in the gym, but just how to start to think differently about these things, and what specifically I can take action on today, and how to quantify those things to get the needle moving. I guarantee if people dig into this, a very quick read with some action steps associated, and a really cool structured tracking form, they're going to make massive change over a 30-day period.
That's nice. Is that like an offer that you have that's a paid offer or is that
No, it's a totally free
Oh, it's free.
guide.
Okay.
So I'll
Oh,
send
great.
you the link.
Yes,
So
yes.
literally that we just are publishing that. So we'll have the free link. You'll have it, I'm sure, in your show notes. I'm going to send you
I
that link.
will.
I should have it here shortly. So check out the show notes for our 30-day reset guide of based on our 5M framework. And then you'll get a download right away. I've got an overview video. So I literally walk you through. It's like 5 minutes, just walk you through. Here's what to focus on. And then here's the cool tracking sheet that I made for you. You can post it on the fridge or you can keep it on your phone. And then you can get started right away.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm so glad you have that. And I will make sure it's in the show notes and everybody can just download it and then start moving forward on their 5 M's. I want one. I mean,
It's yours.
sounds good.
Send it
Yes,
right over.
sounds good. So thank you so much, Ben. Is there anything that we missed? Anything you want to add before we go today?
No, I think if people want to follow me, obviously you'll have our at Body Systems Coaching on IG. That's
Absolutely.
probably the best place. And then our podcast is called the Smart Nutrition Made Simple Show. And you can check out by the time this comes out, 300 plus episodes there. I'm really proud of
Congratulations.
that. You and I both know, and kudos to you, by the way.
Thanks.
You and I both know what a challenge it is to produce this
Mhm.
much and everything that comes around with it. And so I'm very proud of that. I've interviewed a lot of incredible guests, and I'm grateful for everyone's time.
Yeah, I'll make sure a link to that is in the show notes as well. And yeah, congratulations on that. It's no small feat. And you do really have to structure your mindset around it in the right way. It is about the long game. So many things in our lives are, and if we can just relax into that, the happier we are in so many ways,
Easier
right?
said than done, right?
It
So,
is. It is. It's a practice again. So,
yeah,
Ben, thank you so much. It was a joy to talk to you and just my own personal like recalibration I fell off a little bit. I mean, the holidays, all that. We go through little cycles, but I really been working on this in myself and I know a lot of listeners have too. So, thank you so much.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Yes to that reset. That sounds great. And just, you know, it's so funny. I interview so many experts, and what do they say? They all say the same thing, no matter what they're talking about. Really, it comes down to yes, it's important to do your blood work and your supplements and all that kind of stuff, but really, it's about sleep. It's about eating good stuff. It's about moving your body around, you know, lifting heavy things. I mean, every single time. And we overcomplicate everything. And that should be just like a banner for this show, like stop overcomplicating, which is what we're talking about on Anything But Mid, right? If you haven't checked it out, Whitney and I are talking about all this stuff in the real world and helping us not get overwhelmed so we could take what works, leave it all behind, find our personal operating system. Oh my gosh, that's such a great phrase for what works for us. I mean, man, genius. So I love it. Thank you so much to Ben. Thank you to you for being here. Thank you to Podcast Magician. Thank you to who else do I need to thank today? Thank you to, I don't know, everybody. If you want to sign up for the newsletter or connect more with me, that's at Real Amy Edwards or amyedwards.info. Got everything we want there. Of course, Anything But Mid. If you want to donate, we've got Fight for Her, Fight for the Forgotten. We got just stuff all over the place. So you just keep shining bright. Don't let anything dim your shine. I know a lot's going on in the world. And you are loved and we can keep going. We can find joy even when it's hard, even when the world is telling us not to. So we can keep helping people and doing what's right. So yeah, I love you so much. Till next time. Thank you so much for being here. Please rate, review, and follow us. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Keep shining bright.